G'day guys and welcome back to another video on my channel, Nintendo Down Under. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 has some key challenges to overcome, and Majora's Mask hints at how Nintendo may plan to tackle them. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 trailer shows Link and Zelda exploring the depths of the Hyrule Castle, discovering what appears to be corpse of Ganondorf himself, before the body reanimates and the castle appears to begin to lift off, and that's all we basically know so far. Breath of the Wild 2 faces Nintendo with some significant challenges. After the first game saw Link awaken after a 100-year slumber, it made sense for him to start with next to no power, with the character suffering amnesia as he gradually pieces together his past and becomes the knight he was a century before. The explanation is simple, while still allowing Link and Zelda to have a backstory that's uncovered over the game. But Breath of the Wild 2 has no such luxury, assuming that the next game takes place directly after the events of the first, which the trailer seems to imply. Link should be just as powerful as he was when he defeated Calamity Ganon. Starting the game with that level of power, however, would be limiting. It wouldn't allow for a meaningful sense of progress or the fun of surviving in a world in which the player is drastically outmatched. The same can be said for Hyrule's map. One of the best parts of the original Breath of the Wild is slowly uncovering the entirety of Hyrule. Nintendo will also have to find a way to make the world worth exploring again. This could pose an even bigger challenge than Link's power progression. Simply covering the map again and requiring players to unlock it would be tedious for players who already explored it in the first game. Nintendo will need to find an in-universe reason that Link would no longer have knowledge of his surroundings, or at least access to a map of them. The studio will also need to make sure that the players have new motivation to explore regions they've already seen. With Breath of the Wild 2 confirmed to be using the same map as the original, while Majora's Mask doesn't provide direct solutions to these problems, it had similar challenges which might give players a clear idea of how Nintendo could tackle these challenges. Majora's Mask is a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time. It faced similar set of problems to Breath of the Wild 2, explaining how Link's power was reset after the events of Ocarina and giving players a new world worth exploring. Nintendo got around the world problem by setting Majora's Mask in an alternate version of Hyrule Termina, which was also affected by the imagination of the Skull Kid wearing Majora's Mask. However, neither Ocarina nor Majora's Mask were open world, and Breath of the Wild 2's open world may face a bigger risk of repetition by using the same basic structure as the first. Majora's Mask also got around Link's power problem by having the Skull Kid steal Ocarina of Time from him at the start of the game, and turning Link into the DQ scrub. That plus Link's fish out of water presence in Termina helped to explain why the Hero of Time was so suddenly out of his depth at the start of Majora's Mask, and helped the game have a steady sense of progression that was unaffected by but didn't clash with the story of Ocarina. There are a few ways Breath of the Wild 2 could follow the example of Majora's Mask, some which seem to be hinted in the trailer as well. Throughout the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, viewers can hear sounds which sound like they're being played backwards as a mysterious force moves through the castle. This seems to imply that Breath of the Wild 2 will rely on time manipulation to solve some of its key challenges. For example, it's possible that Link and Zelda will find themselves suspended in time for another 100 years, emerging to see a version of Hyrule that's been under Ganondorf's rule for a century. It's unlikely that Nintendo will want to use the amnesia card again, but being flung through time could also have effects on Link that could cause him to lose his powers, or at least some key items like the Master Sword. A significant time jump could also allow Nintendo to make some big edits to the map of Breath of the Wild 2 that could make the world feel worthy of exploration a second time around. Alternate timelines have been a mainstay of the Legend of Zelda franchise, and it seems likely that Ganondorf will have the upper hand yet again, using some form of time manipulation at the start of the game. Until more information is released by Nintendo, we can only speculate. Considering the moves made in Majora's Mask and the similar challenges facing Nintendo with Breath of the Wild 2, however, fans can expect that the start of the game's next story will see a sudden and significant shift of some kind that will leave Link powerless and Hyrule dramatically changed once again. As we know, the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is currently in development for the Nintendo Switch, with still no confirmed release date as of yet. So I think Nintendo definitely has some challenges facing it, because let's face it, when we played Breath of the Wild, the first one, and we wake up from our slumber of being asleep for all those years, exploring the map for the first time, was absolutely amazing. Going to different regions, having to craft your skills, craft your weapons, get better and stronger, get your story back, get your memory back. Now we know all these things, we know our backstory, we are powerful, we've explored Hyrule. Like, how can we be so enthused to explore it again? We need to expand, does it need to be changed because we're asleep? Are they going to play that sleeping card again? It's definitely a challenge for Nintendo, because the Breath of the Wild, they set the bar really high, really high, and as fans we have massive expectation for this game coming out. So you can just imagine if it's just not quite as good or as challenging or make you think outside the box, people are going to be very critical of it, so it's going to be a hard one. So I don't mind Nintendo taking their time with this, probably getting feedback, doing test gaming, doing everything they need to do to make sure this game is just as polished, just as good as the first one. And I'm really hoping Nintendo can hit the nail again with it, because it is still, it's not my favourite game, but it is definitely the best game I've played. And because I've played it twice, I've explored Hyrule twice, I see the point of, I don't really, I would do it, but I don't feel as excited to go to the same spots I've already been a couple of times before, so that is a massive challenge for Nintendo. But to switch things up here, what did you guys think of this game so far? Have you played it? Have you bought it? Me and the fan bam have just started kicking it off, and it's quite fun. With 4 players on the screen at once, though, it can be quite challenging and tedious. You can get in arguments because people are running off and you get stuck and bubbled, but it's still a fantastic game. So if you've picked this game up, please let me know down below in the comments what's your thoughts on the Super Mario 3D World Bowser's Fury so far. And please give me your feedback down below on everything we just talked about today with Breath of the Wild, the challenges coming to the game, because yeah, I'm not concerned, but I'm curious what Nintendo can do about these things to make sure it's just as good, just as polished as the first one. And if you haven't already, guys, don't forget to like us on Facebook, Nintendo Down Under. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Nintendo Down Under. Thank you very much for watching, thank you for subscribing, and take care.